This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.
All right, I'll call the March 25th Public Safety Building Committee meeting to order. The meeting is being recorded. It is about 2 minutes past 4. Open time for the public, and seeing none, we can move right on to approval of the minutes for March 11. I'll give you a minute to review them. May I have a motion to accept them? Or are there comments first?
I'll make a motion to approve as written.
All right, second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Okay, one abstention. How many of us are there? 10? 9 in favor. Okay. All right, Scott, can you give us a bit of a land negotiation update?
We just received the appraisal.
Yep.
The full appraisal for the entire parcel probably won't be for another 2 weeks. So once we have that, we'll start negotiations.
Great. Now, I did send the appraisal out to you, but this is not to be discussed in open session. The amount is not to be discussed, so please be aware of that. Anything that is talked about in open meeting is to not include the value figures. Thank you for that. All right, so
Is there things for the child search?
No updates on that yet.
So, yeah.
They did, obviously the planning board met last week.
right.
So that was approved, and to add a little bit more confusion, they labeled it 125 College Highway instead of 0, so.
Well, it's good now to have a number, actually. That's helpful.
Right.
To have a,
Place it where it is on the street. on the
yeah,
road.
and give it
Yeah.
a real identity. So,
In terms of what was approved, that would be the A and Rs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
so was that approved as a single A and R or as individual, the commercial lot, as 2 separate parcels?
I'm not really sure. I'd have to look at that.
I guess we'd have to look at the map. Maybe you can tell us, Mark. I was wondering if at the planning board, it was a single A&R for both parcels? Was it considered a single parcel?
The donation and the frontage lot is considered as a single parcel.
A single parcel, so it was a single A&R. Can you please clarify what that easement is? There's a 30-foot easement?
That wasn't really discussed, it wasn't part of the A&R, but it's my assumption that on the original development parcel that was, development for the parcel that was proposed by Labrie, they had an easement from the proposed frontage road going behind the two commercial parcels to allow driveway access to the rear of those two parcels. And so that original development proposal had that easement in there, and they retained that easement in this particular situation. I assume because usually you assume that if for some reason the town did not purchase that, they would still have a legal access through that parcel to access the back of that commercial property.
So if the town does purchase it, they will retain that access, is that true?
The Labries will retain that access.
Does that impact anything?
Hard to say. I mean, depends on the specific language. What type of language gives them a right to utilize it, not to necessarily control it, but easements come with specific language associated with it.
That would be something eventually in a purchase and sale, I would assume, right? So,
Anything more on that from anyone else before we move on? Mark, Scott, Chris? Okay. Thank you. All right, so we have 20 minutes and we have several aspects to this. I think that should we consider the video first, because that's so close to being finished, and we need it for the forum. So first of all, Barry, thank you very much. That was a good job introducing. Yeah, it was.
Thank you.
You're very formal. It's good though. I feel quite positive about the video comments.
I'm embarrassed, I didn't look at it.
I
haven't seen it.
Apologies.
Oh, you didn't? Oh, you haven't seen it.
did you send it around recently? I don't think I saw it,
I
sorry.
haven't seen it. I haven't seen it.
Oh,
Oh,
No.
we saw it. Did you watch it,
yeah, I
Chief?
saw it, yes.
Well,
Truth be told,
It was good.
we thought it was good. Did you, Chief? Did you? And I know.
I didn't send it. I know
Well,
I
wait a
didn't, but
minute though. Oh yes, because Jackson sent it to Jim Palermo and
Oh.
Denise Riggs. So they got it and they both responded, made comments. So, oh gosh, I guess.
Were they happy with it?
Yes, so Denise wondered, Jim said it was very good, and Denise wondered if she could be a little more assertive at the end in her closing statement to refer to the difficult conditions that our safety staff are working under, and she wondered if that would be considered too persuasive, because this video is indeed being paid for by town public funds, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So she said that she couldn't be here today to state her case, and she'll be away until April 1st, I believe. But we can consider, and I don't know what the arrangement is with Jackson, how much more filming he's willing to do, if any.
I don't. I know he did express that he wanted to get it.
Sure,
completed.
sure. So I would say that given the public funding for it, she probably should just leave it as bland an ending statement as she has. So as soon as I get home tonight, or after I have some supper, I will send out that video for you, and I do apologize for not getting it to you. I think I sent everything else that has been sent to me, but all right, so there's not really anything more to do to discuss that, since none of you have had the opportunity to
I was just
watch
going
it?
to suggest, since tomorrow night we've got our joint meeting with Select Board, so I think the way we've got it scheduled, we'll open up at 6 and then do the executive session at 7. So if you wanted to take 5 minutes to show the video, we could probably do it so Select Board can see it too. if you
Oh,
wanted
it's
to.
not 5 minutes. It's, what,
It's like
27
26.
minutes?
Oh my God, oh wow.
Yeah, it's
It
long.
got big.
It's
I haven't
extensive.
watched it either.
That's good.
It is. It's very thorough. It's a long tour. And Denise, I think, has done an excellent job.
She did, yeah, she
Great.
did.
And as did both of our chiefs and Barry. So I think it looks quite professional. And so I'll send it out, and we are adjourning to here, or we're moving here. So if you have a chance to watch it between now and tomorrow night's meeting, you can make comments.
What do you mean we're adjourning to here?
Well, after the executive session, so adjourning is probably not the right, but it will stay in or we will move to an open session and meet
come up
here.
here? Oh, okay, all right.
Yeah, that, I listed that, or I posted that. Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Just a curiosity, I know that I haven't seen the video yet, but with it being 27 minutes, is there a possibility that they could do like a smaller TikTok version, like a 60-second type of video, like a highlight video or something like that?
Well, the chief has been working with Jackson directly, and at first, he did just like a 5-minute, and then it was decided it needed to be a little more extensive, and it was suggested, I think, 10 minutes.
10, I think.
And so that suggestion is a good one, just so we have two videos that can be used in different instances. Because I personally, for the forum, I think that to show this video and to have HKT present and then just really open it up to questions will help us a lot. I think we'll gain a lot of information.
Yeah.
So that's my thinking, but I don't want to jump off to the forum in an untimely fashion here. So, all right, how about do you have something to update us on regarding the brochure, or the mailer?
Nothing yet, no updates on it.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, what else is there? Frequently asked questions.
Okay, so I think this was sent out to you, but in case you didn't have a chance to read them, I do have, it's 3 pages, sorry, one side, and 2.
You can't
I
put it
think-
upside down there.
I know you did, and I
It
did.
works someday.
It did today for the minutes, but it didn't work for me to push the right button today. There you go. And then, you got one? And I reordered them a little bit, but I also edited them based on our conversation from the other day. I combined a couple that seem to be redundant.
Thank you.
And so I don't know if you want to go through them one by one. That seems tedious and taking too much time. But maybe you could take your hard copies, read these, and consider discussing them more at the second part of the meeting tomorrow night. That would be my proposal. That unless you have specific questions now that you perhaps thought of when you were reading them before this moment, if you had a chance, and I will edit them again, but that's what I got.
Well, I think let us plan to do that, and if tomorrow evening, we're not going to want to spend a lot of time after our executive session, so if there are considerations for more edits, if we could have those at hand when we meet, that would be appreciated.
Just a mini suggestion, since we now have a new address of 125.
Oh, yeah, change
yes.
that.
Maybe on number 4, we just put it,
Yeah,
that it
good.
will be at 125 College Highway.
That makes it so much
Across from
easier.
125, yeah. Number 125. Okay.
Curiosity question,
Yes, Charlie.
and then this is just coming off left field, but maybe we need to put a sign out there saying proposed site, so when people drive by, they actually see a sign that says this is the proposed site for the public safety complex. That way it'll...
We don't own it, it would take the owners to do it, right?
Well, I understand that, but I'm just thinking about the fact that if you want to start getting people asking questions and looking what's going on, I mean, you put something in the front yard, there's always somebody that's going to comment about what they saw, that the neighbors do.
I think we should wait till we get in the final appraisal and then do some negotiations first. I agree, but let's do it
No.
before town meeting,
Yeah.
not before the 10th of.
Right. Yeah, I think,
And that's fine, I'm just
Yeah,
thinking,
no, it's a good idea. Yeah. So, I mean,
Yes.
probably after the forum, but before town meeting, by then we'll have advanced.
right, I think we need the negotiations to
Yeah.
get to a satisfactory
Yeah.
place.
And-
But
and-
that is a good way.
And just as a thought, whenever we finalize these, which hopefully we can do within the next week or so, we can get them up on the website, but I think it would be good too to make this a handout at
Yes.
this forum. So,
Yes.
we just have to get enough copies made and get them into Lucy and Robert ahead of time to approve, but.
You all know that I won't be available after this week, and
Right.
John's going to pick up on the clerk duty, so he's going to have the draft of that, and so edits can go directly to John on that.
Yes, and thank you, John, for undertaking that. Bonus is appreciated. Okay. Let's see, do we have other public engagement strategies that we need to?
Just a real quick couple of announcements. I let Christina know that, the two other visual opportunities for our town to be a little informed is what we call the Mother's Club sign, which is on the corner of, near the post office. And that's been held for us. I need a volunteer to go to the person who manages the letters. Chris has helped me in the past, but maybe somebody else can help. Her name is Muriel Belanger. Some of you may know her. She's a longtime resident of town on Noreen Circle. And she has the letters, and she's thinking it's fabulous that we're putting up something. And what it can do is it can advertise the public forum. Somebody has to come up, unless I get a chance between now and Friday, and I will happily do a first draft, put the minimal amount of words up there. It's just to advertise the public forum, please attend. That's one place. The other place is this little sign down here that's got Lions Club across the top. Jim Lumbra, John's father, is a member of the Lions, at least he was, and he manages that sign. He puts it up, but he needs the words. So I'll do my best to draft something even before tomorrow, okay? And somebody else can hopefully take up the contacts with Jim. I gave you his email information and
Yes.
and Muriel's phone number. If somebody wants to volunteer to be that person, it works best to have two people do the one at the
Sure.
sign at the corner.
Sure.
And to develop the whole layout in advance, very kind of old-fashioned. It really is. It's, putting up letters. And there's one that it really sticks. Your fingers come out cut and whatever. So
Cindy, what day do we have that reserved for?
31st, all the way through to the forum.
Okay, because there's stuff on it now, I believe, so. yeah.
Yes, there is, yeah. It's held from the 31st. So anybody could pick up the letters at the end of the week or something. Shall we ask for a volunteer to pick that up?
I know where she lives, I can work on that if I need somebody a little bit taller than me to help put the letters up.
Yeah, Chris should not be standing in a chair or a
All
ladder.
right, Scott and I'll tackle it, why not?
Wow, okay, great.
Okay.
Very nice.
That was easy, and thank you. We do still have a few minutes, and the next item on the agenda, unless there's more
Oh,
regarding...
there's task 7.
Oh, yeah, but okay.
Oh, it's on.
Could I just interfere a minute?
Yes,
Scott, do we need to set up your computer for HKT? Is it
Yeah.
your computer
Yeah.
we're using? Okay. All right, sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
Should we do that first? So anyway, here's the next edition of task 7. Do you want me to wait on that?
No, it's not on the agenda, and it's not really public engagement, but I think we can. What I was going to suggest, and we can decide, is whether we should just decide on the language that's going on the sign, so that is complete.
Why don't you let me do that? Just because it takes so many minutes to kind of develop that, and then people can approve it. Does that sound good?
Fine.
Christina?
Okay, so I guess we can address task 7.
All right, so Chief Illingsworth provided some more information. You've seen this. I've not actually reprinted it. I've actually just handwritten this. Today's the 25th, and I put some things in handwriting below. So if you want, you can all have a copy of this. You want to pass these around. Go this way. That's my copy that's got something else on the back. Looks like my medical records. Sorry, my blood values, or Ted's, I don't know what it is. One of us, we're perfectly healthy, just,
You're conserving.
sorry. Anyway, sodium values. Okay, did you get it?
One thing that caught my eye on this and how they're going around. Let's see, here
Okay,
he goes.
yeah.
Yeah, maybe Chief, no, does he have
He's got one.
Okay.
It's got one.
You won't get me anyway, you'll get us. Beginning here, I don't think there's enough camera.
What caught your eye?
No, we're just trying to figure out if we get the best angle here.
Push it back a little further. He's at the end of the table. I get it.
One thing, well, first of all, I'll give you two updates on buildings. I did speak with Stephen Holt in West Hampton, who is he fire chief?
Who's that?
Stephen Holt?
No.
Okay, well, he's on the department. I think he was chair of the building committee. And he said that the West Hampton facility is indeed a prefab. And he has invited us to tour it if we would like. They had tremendous trouble with the contractor working with the architect to bring it up to the stricter standards that are required for a public safety facility. But I'm sure he'd be willing to talk to us about it. Part of the problem was COVID and their original firm, Morton Buildings, pulled out. And so they had to find another firm, and that didn't work out so well. So that's that. And then I just got an email from Bill Sayer from Williamsburg saying that their square foot price was $610 a square foot. And
Now, was that a couple of years ago?
no, they've just finished. Oh, and he also, he notified me that there's an open house, I think in June, and he said that we would be sure to get an invitation to that. So they've just finished that up and moved in. So that was 610, and they have just under 9,000 feet, and West Hampton is 14,000 square feet. And they ended up paying about $4,300,000, I think, 4.3, I believe was what he said.
Remind me of our square footage?
27.
26,000.
26,
Something, change.
So one thing that I wanted to point out here that we're going to have to prepare ourselves for for the forum and for any questions is that Granby has a facility of 18,000 feet with a similar population, and Hadley has roughly 23. So we, with their two facilities, 17,500 and 5,400 roughly. So those are significantly smaller than what we're proposing to the town, and we're going to have to justify to the town why we need that many more 1,000 square feet for a facility that is, for a town that has similar populations.
That works out to $1,500 a square foot.
What's
What'd you
that?
say?
Works out to $1,500 a square foot, our new building.
It does?
No, on what they sent us? No.
You did the math based on Their quote,
You want a
and square foot,
The price per square foot.
keep it 1,500.
Divided by 26,000.
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance to look at the cost
I
estimate.
thought they had it at 900 and
That was 900.
970. I thought that's what I saw on the,
Well, when you add all the soft costs and everything else.
Oh, that's right.
what it
That's
comes
hard
out to.
costs.
right. So we'll find, I spoke with Janet today, so maybe,
I just did it from the square footage and.
right. So the soft cost, they increased it by 25%. And then the owner's contingency, they
Can you guys
increased it
speak
by
up a little louder?
10%. I'm sorry. For soft costs, you have, they increased it by 25%. And for, they called it owner's contingency costs, they increased it another 10% to the hard costs.
Just one thought, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but as we look at this and our costs and what was projected, following on Christina's point, should we also take a minute at some point before the forum and go back and look at the design from 2015 in terms of what that square footage was and what's different in terms of, if we've added 10,000 square feet, where have we added it?
I think that one was, the 2015 one was 23,000 square feet.
Okay.
So we've added 3.
Okay. So the main thing has just been the building costs in 9 or 10 years since then, basically, yeah.
But also the square footage. They sold that, not so much the cost, but, if our square footage is 8,000 square feet more than Granby.
Yeah,
Why-
no, I was just saying, the earlier Southampton one, from 2015, that's all I'm saying.
Okay, well, I guess are they with us? Do you know?
We just have to let them in.
They're connecting,
probably.
right?
Oh,
Hey, Janet, can you hear us?
She's on mute. There's Amy coming up. Okay, there we go.
We hear them, they hear us?
Can you hear us okay?
We can't hear them.
No.
maybe, Amy, can you hear us? And we can't hear
We
you.
can't
Are
hear
you
you
on
now.
mute?
Can you get out of your way, Scott?
No, I'm just trying to, is there a separate speaker?
No, I mean, we don't usually need anything else, I mean,
Is this connect?
It's the phone, isn't it?
yeah, that's the,
I don't know if he connects to this or
I can
not.
go downstairs and get some
That's
speakers.
the
I think that
phone.
might be. Oh, can you hear us now?
They can hear us, but we
Can you
can't.
say
we can't hear
anything?
you.
Oh, now try that.
We lost the TV.
Yeah.
Yeah, see if it's a connection issue. Oh, can you say something, Janet? Or Amy?
They're talking.
Okay. Oh, wait. That's why this is turned on.
Great.
There you go.
There we go.
Okay, so we got
Can you hear
volume
us?
there.
Coming in.
We
slowly.
can now.
Getting closer.
Your camera got moved there. Yeah, we can see like from the tops of your heads up.
All right.
That's it.
We're getting there.
You have lovely hair today.
There we go.
How's that?
Mostly we can see the ceiling.
See, we're looking at ceiling, Scott, you gotta move that, yeah,
Ah,
there
there
you
you
go.
go. There you go. There you go.
Let me get some external speakers, see if that'll work.
If they can hear us, that's good.
Yep. Everything still good?
Yep. Still hear you?
Okay. We'll do that, so do some external speakers. But go ahead, continue. I'll just.
Hello, all right, we're gonna turn it right over to you.
Great. I'm going to share my screen. We've got a PowerPoint.
Get a little louder there.
It's as loud as it goes. We're not connected to that screen for some reason.
Put the button on the side, Ian.
Yeah.
Should be a volume button there.
Whoops. Not the right screen, eh?
Yeah.
I know.
Everybody's having tech issues.
Come on. There we go. Well, that's interesting. It seems to be
No, I was just
doing closed
Did
captioning.
you see everything? Yeah, we're gonna be-
Never seen that before. All right, you can see the presentation now?
Yes,
Yeah.
Excellent. I can.
but we need
All right.
better volume.
Yeah,
did
it's not as good on the
everyone get,
volume yet, for some
We're-
reason.
We're only,
We're
we're only getting your audio through our computer, not through our other speakers. We don't know why.
Okay. Can you hear me well enough, or do you need to try to troubleshoot it?
It's a little faint.
You may have to speak very loudly.
We're trying to get some
For now,
external
anyway.
speakers right now.
Okay, all right, I'll do my best here. We've got Janet's right behind me, so I don't want to speak too loudly because you might have an echo. But maybe if I hold the microphone a little bit close to my mouth, that might help a little bit too. So, okay, so let's dive in here. The things that we have on our agenda today are to talk about the cost. We did send out the estimate last week. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at it. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then talk about some of the communication tools that you'd like us to develop to get the word out about the project. And then the community information meeting that we have coming up. And then we'll talk about the schedule, the overall schedule. Oh, my computer just froze here. There we go. Okay, so when we talk about the cost for the project, there are two components of the cost we're going to talk to you about: the hard construction costs and the soft costs. And we changed these slides a little bit since what we sent out to you to try to clarify this a little bit more. We'll send out the updated package after this meeting. The hard construction costs are the numbers that you saw in that estimate that we sent to you from TCI, who's our professional cost estimator. The hard construction costs are the costs that would be incurred by the general contractor working on it. And when the cost estimator puts that together, we gave them a package of information that included sort of limited drawings and then engineering narratives. So the drawings were ones that you had seen for the most part, the plans, the architectural plans that we had put together, and the elevations. And we mark those up with all kinds of notes with different assumptions that he needs to make about the way the walls are going to be built, about the types of materials that we're going to use. We really cover them with notes describing wall assemblies, roof assemblies, what type of blockers we're using, anything that we know but isn't depicted on the drawings yet, we leave him notes so that he can make assumptions about that. We did the same thing with the civil drawings that you've seen. We sent him those. And then we did have narratives from the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection engineers describing the systems that they would anticipate putting in the building. So he had all of that to look at as he put together the cost estimate.
No, she's frozen. No, she froze. I don't know if you can hear us, but you froze.
You might be on their end.
Looks like we lost them.
Yeah, we lost them both, yeah.
Recording in progress.
Can you hear us?
We can now, but we're still doing some stuff here, so bear with us for a
Yeah,
moment.
hold on a minute, Amy, till we...
Do you want me, I'm sorry, do you want me to pause or you want me to go ahead?
You better pause just for a moment here.
Sure. Janet's having some problems too. It's saying Zoom is frozen for her.
That's weird.
Are we plugged into that central tripod thing? Or
No, not now. We were.
I'm wondering if that. Did we know they did it?
Default speaker has changed to speakers. There we go. Should be now.
Can you say something, Amy or Janet?
There we go.
Can you hear me now?
That's a little better.
Yep.
Yeah, there we go.
All better?
Much better, yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, Janet's trying to log back in because she was having some issues with Zoom too. Are you good for me to go?
I think so, yes, please.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So I'm
that's
just
good.
going to back up and I'll talk a little bit more about the energy code here and the base cost. So, because I think this is important because a lot of people who are going to be comparing numbers, costs for what they are now versus recently completed projects, I think you need to understand that the energy code is having an impact.
To that. So they've just finished that up and moved in. So that was 610 and they have just under 9,000 feet and West Hampton is 14,000 square feet. And they ended up paying about 4,300,000, I think, 4.3, I believe was what he said.
Remind me of our square footage?
27.
26,000.
26, yeah. So one thing that I wanted to point out here that we're going to have to prepare ourselves for for the forum and for any questions is that Granby has a facility of 18,000 feet with a similar population, and Hadley has roughly 23. So we, with their two facilities, 17,500 and 5,400 roughly. So those are significantly smaller than what we're proposing to the town. And we're going to have to justify to the town why we need that many more 1,000 square feet for a facility that is for a town that has similar population. What's that?
South of $1,500 a square foot. All right.
It does.
What they sent us?
You did the math based on the quote, square foot,
The price per square foot?
1,500.
No. By 26,000.
Yeah.
I didn't have a chance to look at that.
I thought they had it at 900 and
That was 900.
700, 970. But that's what I saw on the,
Well, when we had all the soft costs and everything else.
Oh, that's right. That's hard costs.
right. So we'll find, I spoke with Janet today, so maybe,
I just.
yeah, right. So the soft cost, they increased it by 25%. And then the owners contingency, they
You guys
increased
took
it
up a
by,
little louder.
I'm sorry, for soft costs, you have, they increase it by 25%. And for, they called it owners contingency costs, they increase it another 10% to the hard costs.
One thought, and I don't know if this makes any sense, but as we look at this and our costs and what we're projecting, follow down Christina's point, should we also take a minute at some point before the forum and go back and look at the design from 2015 in terms of what that square footage was and what's different in terms of, if we've added 10,000 square feet, where have we added it?
I think that one was, the 2015 one was 23,000 square feet. So we've added 3.
Yeah. So the main thing is from the building costs in 9 or 10 years since then, basically. Yeah.
But also the square footage. And so that not so much cost, but if our square footage is 8,000 square feet more than Granby.
Yeah, I was just saying the earlier Southampton one, right? 2015, that's on.
Okay, well, I guess are they with us? Do you know?
We just have to let them connect.
Hey, Janet, can you hear us?
There's Amy coming up. Okay, there we go.
Hello.
Hello.
They hear us?
Can you hear us okay?
We can. Can you hear us?
You can't hear them.
No.
Maybe. Amy, can you hear us?
Yes.
And we can't hear you. Are you on mute?
No, I'm not on mute.
Yeah, your waist down to
No, we don't usually need anything else.
Is this me?
Yeah.
What's this?
Your phone.
Oh, can you hear us now?
Yes. Can hear you. Can you hear us?
Can you see anything?
I can see you. Yep.
Top of people's heads
I'll
and the
try
ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see if it's a connection issue. Oh, can you say something, Janet?
We're talking. Can
Hello?
you hear us?
Okay.
Okay. Oh, wait.
Sign language.
Right.
There you go. There we go.
Okay,
Can
so
you
we
hear
got
us?
fine there.
Coming in.
We can now.
Oh, excellent. Your camera got moved there. Yeah. We can see like from the tops of your heads up. That's it.
We're getting there.
You all
It's
have
the most
lovely hair
important
today.
How's that?
Mostly we can see the ceiling.
You were looking at Steve's got your that.
Oh,
There you come. There you come. There you go.
Let me get some external speakers, see if that'll work.
They can hear us. That's good.
Yep. Everything still good?
Yep. We can still hear you.
Maybe that's what used to like. Go ahead.
Hello. All right. We're going to turn it right over to you.
Okay. Great. I'm going to share my screen. We've got a PowerPoint here.
We're not connected to that.
Let's see. Oh, I got to move.
Button on the side again.
Yeah.
Your volume button.
Whoops.
Not the right screen, Amy.
I know it. Nope, wrong thing to toggle. Come on. I'm having. There we. Well, that's interesting. It seems to be doing closed captioning here. There we go. I've never seen that before. All right, you can see the presentation now?
Yes.
Excellent.
I
Okay.
can.
All right. And did everyone get what we sent out?
Yeah, we're only getting your audio through our computer, not through our other speakers. We don't know why.
Okay. Can you hear me well enough, or do you need to try to troubleshoot it?
You may have to speak very loudly.
We're trying to get some
For now,
external
anybody?
speakers right now.
Okay. All right. I'll do my best here. We've got Janet's right behind me, so I don't want to speak too loudly because you might have an echo. But maybe if I hold the microphone a little bit close to my mouth, that might help a little bit too. So, okay. So let's dive in here. The things that we have on our agenda today are to talk about the cost. We did send out the estimate last week. Hopefully you've all had a chance to take a look at it. We'll talk a little bit more about that and then talk about some of the communication tools that you'd like us to develop to get the word out about the project, and then the community information meeting that we have coming up. And then we'll talk about the schedule, the overall schedule. Oh, my computer just froze here. There we go. Okay, so when we talk about the cost for the project, there are two components of the cost we're going to talk to you about: hard construction costs and the soft cost. And we changed these slides a little bit since what we sent out to you to try to clarify this a little bit more. We'll send out the updated package after this meeting. The hard construction costs are the numbers that you saw in that estimate that we sent to you from TCI, who's our professional cost estimator. The hard construction costs are the costs that would be incurred by the general contractor working on it. And when the cost estimator puts that together, we gave him a package of information that included sort of limited drawings and then engineering narratives. So the drawings were ones that you had seen for the most part, the plans, the architectural plans that we had put together and the elevations, and we mark those up with all kinds of notes with different assumptions that he needs to make about the way the walls are going to be built, about the types of materials that we're going to use. We really cover them with notes describing wall assemblies, roof assemblies, what type of lockers we're using, anything that we know but isn't depicted on the drawings yet, we leave him notes so that he can make assumptions about that. We did the same thing with the civil drawings that you've seen. We sent him those. And then we did have narratives from the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection engineers describing the systems that they would anticipate putting in the building. So he had all of that to look at as he put together the cost estimate. One of the things that the base number that you see in that cost estimate includes are envelope features. So for the walls, exterior walls, and the roof, things that we anticipate would be needed to meet the current energy code. There's a new energy code in Massachusetts that was promulgated last year, and it is having an impact on how we build buildings and the amount of insulation that needs to be put into these buildings, which has cost implications. We have, for some of our projects, been carrying those costs as an alternate cost during the design until we do energy models to figure out whether they're needed. And what we're finding is that they are needed. Whoop, Janet, I just lost them. Can you hear us?
We can now, but we're still doing some stuff here, so bear with us for
do you want me, I'm sorry, do you want me to pause or you want me to go ahead?
You better pause just for a moment here.
Sure. So I'm talking to them right now, so you might want to log out and go back in if Janet's having some problems too. It's saying Zoom is frozen for her.
It's weird.
Are we plugged into that central tripod thing? No.
Can you say something, Amy or Janet?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There we go.
All better?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Janet's trying to log back in because she was having some issues with Zoom too. But are you good for me to go?
I think so. Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So I'm just going to back up and I'll talk a little bit more about the energy code here and the base cost. So because I think this is important because a lot of people who are going to be comparing numbers, costs for what they are now versus recently completed projects. I think you need to understand that the energy code is having an impact on costs right now. As I said, for some of our other projects, the first ones that we started to develop under the new energy code, when we were putting together these early stage cost estimating packages, we were asking the cost estimator to pull out certain envelope features as an alternate cost because we didn't know whether or not we were going to need them. For the energy code, we need to run an energy model to really figure out what's going to be needed. And so things like triple glazed windows or added insulation beyond what we would normally do in an exterior wall or in a roof, we were pulling them out as alternate costs to sort of track them until we knew whether or not they were going to need to be incorporated. And what we're finding and what our engineers are finding is that we're needing to incorporate those things. We're going through this on other projects and the engineers as well. And they're saying that, in all the energy models that they're running for these similar buildings, they're needing to do the triple glazed windows and they're needing to do, roofs with close to R50 insulation and walls with R30 insulation. So for your estimate, we just included those in the base calculation because we thought it was a lot cleaner and we wanted you to understand the costs that you're going to be incurring here. So those are in the base number. And then the other things that the energy code are now requiring for these projects is that the roof is made to be solar ready. So you don't need to put the PV panels on the roof to meet the code, but you do need to have the infrastructure in place. You do need to structure the roof to carry the PV panels. You do need to have some of the electrical infrastructure and conduit and all going up to the roof so that if in the future you decide to add PV panels, that infrastructure is there and ready and waiting for you. And similarly, you have to do the same thing with electric vehicle charging. 20% of the parking spaces have to be EV ready. So there have to be these provisions and the infrastructure in place so that if you decided to put charging stations in the future, you could do that. And those being solar ready and EV ready are just base requirements of the energy code right now. So those provisions we've included in your base cost. We did also, as alternate costs, give you what the cost would be to put those electric vehicle charging stations in at the beginning in construction of this project and go ahead and put in some PV panels right from the get-go. So the PV panels and the charging stations are alternate costs in the cost estimate. So this is a conceptual design level estimate. This is during a feasibility study. So just by the nature, the drawings are not fully developed. The information in the drawings now is less than we would have at the schematic design phase, and that's less than we would have at the design development phase, and so on. So as I said, we marked up the drawings and the narratives as much as we could, but where the information was not available or not complete, the professional cost estimator makes assumptions based on his professional knowledge and his experience. This is someone that we in our office have worked with for, it's got to be close to 10 years, if not more. We go back to him over and over again because he is very good at what he does. And he's never led us astray, but he also then knows the way we work, and he knows when he knows the types of designs we do. He knows the types of materials that we use, the types of wall assemblies that we use, and so on. So even if we miss a note, he tends to know exactly what we would do in that situation and picks it up in the estimate. The estimate you'll see has a line item in it for a design and pricing contingency, and he's carrying 10%. That basically covers any unknowns that were not in the documents or that we don't know at this time. What we expect over time is that design and pricing contingency percentage goes down, but the costs associated with it get pulled into the number above because there's more documentation. So in the end, if we do our job, the overall estimate of project cost doesn't change. It stays right in about the same level, but the distribution changes so that design and pricing contingency percentage, as you go into schematic design and design development and construction documents, the percentage drops. And so that number drops, but that's because the number above the line is increasing as there's more documentation available and more detail put into the estimate, detailed line items based on what's in the drawings. And then, as I said, we did some alternates for the cost estimate. We had 6 alternates and they were all green design features. There were the different HVAC systems that we talked about when we met with GGD with you. And then there's the PV, there's the PV ready roof, the EV ready, or the EV charging stations. And I think we did some rainwater harvesting. Forgetting what the last one was. A green roof, to put a green roof on part of the building. So we can talk about those alternates, but we pulled those out because we knew you were interested in finding out the cost for different green design features, but you might not want to include them in the project. So that's all hard construction costs, the costs of the contractor. We should say costs have really been increasing rapidly, especially during the pandemic. We saw escalation costs. So escalation is just sort of how much costs rise every year. Historically, we've looked at about 3.8 to 4% annual is a good number for costs increasing. Through the pandemic, that changed wildly. We saw in the city some costs increasing 15% a year. On average, over Massachusetts, it's been close to 10% a year. It's really been unprecedented in this time. Our cost estimator has been tracking it through the pandemic and beyond. And he's really seeing at this point in time, costs are not going down. It's not stabilizing. Escalation is about 7 to 10% per year right now. So when he did his construction estimate, he assumed that you would go out to bid in 2025. I think we said mid 2025. So I think we figured, if you went to town meeting and got the funds to continue with design and then started a design, spent about a year putting the documents together, and then went out to bid May, June of next year. That was sort of the timeline that we were looking at when we gave him the cost estimate. And so he's factored in escalation based on that. If you delay the project further than that, then you need to add on another 7 to 10% per year of escalation beyond that. So the other piece of total project costs, and this is a slide that we didn't include in what we sent to you on Friday, but we wanted to talk to you about it, is soft costs. So soft costs are all the costs related to a project that are not part of the general contractor's scopes. So that's things like architect and engineering fees, owner's project manager fees, hiring a clerk of the works to monitor construction during the construction period. Commissioning is required now. Some basic commissioning is required by the energy code now. And so you have to hire a commissioning agent to work for you. There are permitting and legal fees, utility company back charges, and there's testing of materials and soils and all during construction. Those are the fees and expenses. Before that, I'm going a little out of order here, but furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, loose furnishings, so desks, beds, chairs, conference room tables, all of those things. And then there's program-related equipment. There might be things like gun lockers that get put in the Sally Port and other places around the station. If the fire department needs, a new extractor or a new SCBA equipment, those sorts of things. Data and telecom, so telephones, computers, any audiovisual equipment that you might need, projectors, those sorts of things are all in the soft cost category. You don't put them in the contractor's budget. They're things that are purchased by the town separately. And then we always carry a contingency, an owner's contingency. And I think right now we have a 10% owner's contingency, and that covers a wide variety of things. There could be construction items that come up. There could be unforeseen conditions once you start digging. Sometimes we do geotechnical work ahead of time, and that hopefully uncovers everything, but you just never know. Strange things happen. We had one project where we started digging and we found oil drums that had to be disposed of. Sometimes you find boulders that you didn't expect. And then, owner's project items. You might decide, make certain assumptions now that you're going to, reuse certain furniture, and then by the time the building's built, it's not worth using, and you decide you need to replace all of it. Or you might decide, gee, I thought we'd use the station this way, but in reality, we want to change a couple of things. And so there's a little redesign, and maybe there's some added construction cost. Those are owner project items. So it's the combination of the hard construction costs that are paid to the general contractor and these soft costs. That's what forms the total project cost. And that's what we're going to talk about on the next slide. So before I go on, does anybody have any questions about all of that? Okay. So here are the numbers. So at the top here, this overall slide adds together the hard costs and the soft costs to give you the total project costs. And so those first categories, the public safety building and site, the 27,398,000 number, that is from TCI's cost estimate, and that is just for the building and site itself, assuming the mid-2025 construction start. We did have him pull out separately the cost of the carports. There was a 3-vehicle carport for the fire department, and then the 9-vehicle carport for the police department, as well as the shooting range. And the shooting range that we had him specify is one we had talked to you about previously. It's a prefabricated, freestanding unit that gets fabricated off-site and shipped to the site. And so there's a little bit of cost to prep the site for it, to make connections for utilities and all. We've done these. We did one of these in the Ashland Public Safety Building, and we thought it was a great solution to meet their needs. So this building and site and those 3 items together gives you the hard construction estimate of the $29,468,826 that came from TCI's estimate. And then adding on to that, the soft costs. At this point in the project, we oftentimes don't try to estimate each category of the soft costs. And we know from similar projects that they tend to run about 25% of the hard construction cost to cover all those soft costs that we talked about. So right now we're carrying 25% of the $29 million number, and that gives us the $7,367,207. And on top of that, we have a 10% owner's contingency. So the soft costs together are the $10,314,090. And when we add the hard costs and the soft costs together, we get an overall project cost of $39,782,916. Then we have these alternates, which we'll talk about a little bit on the next slide. But we have one alternate that was a deduct cost, and then 5 that were add costs. And you wouldn't do all of them, because you need to choose one HVAC system versus another. But these are just a total of what each of them are. So the 6 alternates that we have are listed here, and items 1 and 2 are for the different HVAC systems. So we've got the base option number 1 for the HVAC system is in the based costs. If you chose to go with the HVAC option 2, which was the air source VRF system, then you would deduct $152,000 from the hard construction from the, let me grab my pointer here, from this number here. You would deduct it from this number here. Oops, sorry, wrong way. If you chose to go with the groundwater source hydronic system, the geothermal system, which was option number 3, you would add the 1.9 million to the hard construction costs. In this case, there would also be some added soft costs. There would, to go with a geothermal system, there would be some added design fees. You have to hire a specialty engineer to be able to design that system. You have to do a little bit more drilling, geotechnical work and all. So again, rather than try to figure out exactly what each of those soft costs would be, we assume a 25% of this number, which is an added $475,000. So the impact to the total project cost would be the 2.3 million here. Okay, so those first 2 are alternates for the HVAC system that you can choose. And then the next 4 are sort of the green design options that we put together for you. So in the base bid, we have the base estimate, we have the cost for the EV ready parking spaces, the 21 EV ready parking spaces. So all the infrastructure is there, but you don't actually have the charging station. But to go ahead and add the charging station, it would be this would be the add to the hard cost, and then the overall project cost would be approximately $361,000. Similarly, if you were to add PV on the roofs, we've got the PV ready in the base bid, but to add them to the roofs, you would have an add to the project here of about $754,000. And we just had him do, I'm looking to see what we had him assume for that. He assumed 64 kilowatt array on the roof, which is something similar to what we're doing on another project right now. But the reality is, if you chose to go ahead and put PV on the roofs, you would hire a solar consultant, and they would do a study of, given the orientation of the roofs and all, where it would be most advantageous to have the PV panels and how much power you'd be able to generate as a result of that. And so those are the types of things that would be in the soft costs, as well as there's some permitting costs associated with putting the PV on the roof, and all of that would be an added cost to the project. For item 5, we said, okay, what if we were to collect the rainwater off the roofs and harvest it and use it for flushing toilets, or taking showers, or irrigation, something like that. And that was an added cost of almost $500,000 to the project. And then green roofs. We said to him, assume that we would put a green roof system over just the administration wing. So the green roofing system provides added insulation. It helps a little bit with rainwater or stormwater collection, because the plant uses some of the water. You don't have quite as much runoff. It also can protect the underlying roof membrane system, so it does have some benefits, but it definitely comes with a cost. As you can see, it was about $1.8 million to the overall project. Okay, so these are options for the project, but none of these are required to make a functioning public safety facility. These are just the different options that you can have for different HVAC systems or for different green options that we put together. Okay, I think that's that's what we have for cost. I don't know if anyone wants to discuss cost before we move on to communications at all. We can go through the estimate in detail if you want, but honestly, there's a lot of detail here. If you have specific questions, I'm happy to address any specific questions you have. But I don't know. Initial thoughts?
I had just one question on the item 2 and maybe even on item 4. I believe when you did the earlier presentation, we talked about some items being available or possibility of getting rebates on some of these items, so that cost would not exactly be that cost, even though it's kind of a sticker shocker right now, right?
Yep, for sure. So the engineers, when they do their life cycle cost assessment, which is something that they do during the schematic design phase, the next phase you would go into, that's something that they look at. We just completed one, and we're just presenting it to a town actually this week on a different project, and they did look at rebates. So on that project, for example, we are considering a geothermal system, and there are substantial grant opportunities, federal grants that are available right now for the geothermal system. The trick is, of course, you still have to pay the upfront cost for those things, and then you get a rebate later on. And one of the tricks is politically, you never know what's going to happen and what's going to change. So, there are programs available right now, but we have an election in November. If the administration changes, will those programs still be available? I don't know. And I don't know, for that project, we're talking about investigating to see whether they can get locked in now, even though construction won't be done at that point. Is there any way you can basically get into the grant program and get it locked in now? We need to look into that and find that out, because those things are always changing. So, at some level, they have to make the decision, and you have to make the decision too. Is it a cost that you can stomach paying, with the unknowns about whether or not you would be able to get reimbursed for a grant? But there are grant programs out there for sure. So, and in the case of that program, that project, they were basically showing with the federal grants that are available, that it would be an instant payback. Like basically they would get enough money back to pay for, between the money they got back and whatever savings they would see, that within the first year they would have the system paid for. But that's based on the grants that are available right now. So, okay. Does anybody else have anything? Big numbers, I know. As I say, numbers have really been, costs have been increasing wildly through the pandemic and beyond. And so I don't know what people were expecting, if you had any sort of preconceived ideas about where the costs might come in, but we're not seeing any tapering off of costs at the moment, unfortunately. There have been, some people went out of business during the pandemic, some contractors. There aren't as many bidders out there, so there's less competition, which doesn't help with the costs. There's still labor shortages. There's still long lead times for some things. The triple glazed windows, for example, are one thing because of the energy code that we're seeing. I forgot, Janet, what the number, how many months he said. Was it 6 months or something for?
No, it was 12 to 14 months.
12 to 14 months for a lead time for a triple glazed window right now, because the manufacturers just can't keep up. They haven't ramped up their product offerings to meet the new energy code. So for the project that we're doing right now, that's in design right now, we contacted one window manufacturer, and they basically had one window that had the high performance that we needed, and that could accept the triple glazing in order to meet the energy code. And so there's just a lot of demand right now, and the manufacturers need to step up and have more product offerings and more manufacturing in order to meet the demand. They're not quite there yet. and all of that has an effect.
I have a question about this, and I'm thinking about people at the forum who might ask questions. Number one, you sort of partially answered it. If you can give rationale for why costs went up during the pandemic or post-pandemic, like you just did, that would be one thing. And the other one is probably, I know the answer, but is there anything in our current structures that can be recycled into a new facility of any kind? Or is that a really foolish question? You know what I mean? Can we?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think costs during the pandemic, I mean, like everything's gone up, right? I mean, we all know when we go to the supermarket and all, the costs have just skyrocketed in the past few years. And I think, as I said, some companies have gone out of business. There are fewer contractors out there competing for the jobs. We all have stories in the office where we've had projects go out to bid and, there's been one filed sub-bidder who's bid, or there's been two general contractors who've bid. There just aren't as many firms out there. As costs have risen, part of the problem is too, as costs have risen, contractors' bonding capacities haven't risen at the same rate. So these contractors get busy with jobs with higher values, and then another job comes out that they might have gone after in the past, but they just don't have the bonding capacity available because of all their other work to go after the job. They're up against their sort of maximum limits. And so you end up with less competition. The labor shortage is a real thing. They might not have enough people available to do the work. So all of that has had an impact on the projects. As far as what you could reuse, I don't know that there's anything structurally in the buildings that you could reuse. Both of those buildings have served the town well for a long time, but they are at the end of their life. There is some equipment. I know the fire department has some, and I can't remember if they had an extractor or a gear dryer, things like that.
I think they went to another town to do their gear and extractor issues,
Okay.
I believe.
Okay.
But there might be some stuff like that.
There might be some stuff like that that could get reused and frequently does get reused from project to project. But that would help with some of the soft costs, but not necessarily with the hard costs. I don't know that there's anything really worth reusing in either of those buildings at this point.
Nothing obvious, at least.
An obvious, yeah. Yeah. Was there another point? You asked about one other thing. Did I answer your whole question?
You answered them both. Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think maybe just one more. I think in the somewhere, I can't remember which document, if it wasn't this one, it was the previous one that you sent that had the more itemized detail of like every chair, every bed, every whatever, right?
I didn't hear I don't understand the question.
Could you say that one more time?
Yeah. I think it had the much more itemized detail on the soft costs, especially, or on both costs, actually, I guess. But
so in the estimate that TCI did, that's very detailed for the hard construction cost. That goes into a lot of detail. Counting doors, counting windows,
right.
Square footage of different wall assemblies and everything. The soft cost, we could try, but frankly, there's a lot that's unknown at this point. Things like utility company back charges, you don't even know that until construction generally, because the utility companies, they're not really willing to do any of the upfront engineering until a building permit has been pulled and they know that the project's going to happen. So, there are things like we can estimate the architectural and engineering and OPM fees, things like that. But a lot of the rest of it, it's really hard to come up with an estimate at this point. And as I say, generally it's about 25%. We know that. We can give you different categories that it's typically in, but I think if we were to break it down, you'd find that the number would end up being about 25%.
Items like furniture, I'd have to add to that conversation is furniture has no cost and it has every cost. There is no, like if you look in a commercial furniture thing, it'll say a chair costs $400, but that chair that costs $400, if you buy 10 of those chairs, they might cost $350. And if you buy 30 of those chairs, it may cost 300. So there's a way that they look at it. And the more you buy, and the more you buy at one brand, the cost is a little less. So, and it's not at all like going to, to a regular store to buy it. So it's really hard to do furniture. We used to do it like say, own this much per office at one point, or this much and it just doesn't work out, because, you just don't know. Now, that's something else that there are towns who say, well, we're going to bring our old furniture over. And, it's pretty rough shape, typically because it's so old, but it also doesn't fit in the rooms a lot of times, and it doesn't have the power capacities. We're putting all new systems in, and you got to plug these things in and whatever, and you've got a wooden desk that doesn't fit in the room anymore, because it was made for a much bigger room, or it was a surplus piece of furniture from someplace else. And so it's gone through many lives. So that is a cautious story about furniture, about getting that number. And furniture for a building of this size, it can get substantial, so I caution about that one, and that's a number on here. So, try to think of, the other things. Amy, could you go back to that slide about the soft costs? You mentioned reuse. So for instance, when you look at data and telecom equipment, somebody say, well, we just bought new phones, 2 years ago, we take them. Absolutely. We have some AV equipment that we'd like to take. Absolutely. But when it comes to security, you're going to have infrastructure for cameras and everything. But if somebody says we have a Bosch cameras that we use all the time, and we have 8 of them, can we add on to them? Absolutely. But you'd have to take the risk that some of those things, the quality of them would be, by the time this building gets built in 2026 or something, that's what we're talking about. That equipment is already how old at that point. So you got to play those. You'd have to have those conversations as well. So. Is a harder one to, the FF&E, which is furniture, fixtures, and equipment, is a tough one to pin down really early. So,
I'd like to ask a question. You have said that this is based on a 2025 bid assumption, and then you have just described the difficulty in getting windows and the shortage of construction companies, etc. Can we assume that the project will be delayed because of this, and that thus the costs will be even higher than what you're projecting?
No, I don't think you need to assume that. I think what we're saying is the cost is based on going out to bid at that point in time, not when the project would be completed. I think, and hopefully, in a year, some of these issues with availability of, windows and things like that will work themselves out. I think right now it's just that the energy code is so new, but this is assuming, he took all his market assumptions into consideration when he was putting the estimate together, and assumed that a project going out, mid next year, this would be the cost for it. And I think that's the number you go with. If you delay beyond that, then you need to start factoring an additional escalation. So, even if you delay 4 months, then you need to assume that, 7 to 10% per annum is what costs are increasing, and you need to factor that in for that 4-month delay. But assuming next summer, this is the number you use.
Yeah, he said mid. So, you have in 2025, you'd have 6 months of the year that you would escalate. So, anywhere from 3.5% to 5%. And then the year after that, it could be 7 to 10. Now, hopefully what happens is we see those numbers come down, go 7 to 10, but we just haven't seen it right now. So, we don't advise people to be too Pollyanna about numbers coming down, because we thought the numbers were going to come down last year. They just haven't come down, and for all the reasons Amy has said, contraction and materials and energy codes and, a lot of things. The one good news about where you are on this and the scale of the project is that Jerry, his name is Jerry, the TCI, has said that when you're, under $30 million, there's still a decent group of contractors out there bidding. But over 30 million, to, 40 to 50 million is harder to find the contractors. And beyond that, then you get into whole other worlds of construction managers at risk and things like that. So he did say to me that, being under 30 is positive, as far as getting a group of contractors to be interested in bidding it. So, if there's any good news about a $30 million project. So, anyway, I do want to bring that up. It was, he was just telling me about, his project that's being bid. They might get one bidder, So when I had a project recently, we only had one bidder, and it was in the Western Massachusetts. So a different scale of a project. So not relatable, but it's happening. So.
Okay.
Okay.
So keep.
A question, possible decreases in the cost of the project. Are there any, called deduct alternates? One, for example, is landscaping that we would put off, and the other was potential to have a 3-bay fire station with the potential to add on the 4th bay at a later date.
I had a hard time hearing.
Well, some people leave out the landscaping, and they said, well, we'll plant it later. That has ramifications about responsibility, like who's going to do it, who's going to plant, especially if the planting has something to do with how the water drains and things like that, so that's important. To really bring down the cost, you'd have to chop pieces of the building off, a whole bay or something like that, because you can't just make it a foot narrower or a foot less steep or something like that, because the steel doesn't change, the mechanical systems don't change, so you don't really gather. But if you cut off an entire bay of the building that was 70 feet long and 24 feet wide, yes, you're going to see a drop in the overall project. We designed one fire station that had a wall at the far wall of an apparatus bay, and we designed it so that if they could ever afford to add another bay on, they would not be dismantling bearing walls, structural walls, things like that. It was really made up of plywood and cold steel framing, and I think there was metal siding on the side, something very simple. That is a possibility that, we plan an addition early on, but until you start cutting big parts of it, I have to say, during programming, you folks did not over ask on any level. We didn't sense, really grabbing of space. These were spaces. You could argue, do I need this many bedrooms or do I need this many offices? And maybe if we combined it, but until you get a big space out of it, you're not going to save tons of money. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't, be prepared for a cut of square footage. If need be. One thing I will say about square footage is the energy code requires more mechanical spaces, and the communication stuff has required more mechanical spaces rather than less. What you see on your desktop is smaller. What goes into supplying the power needs for that or whatever, the rooms have not gotten smaller. In fact, they've added a little bit more to them. So anyhow, there's those spaces that are required that simply are required, and there's no getting rid of those, no matter even if you cut down the building a little bit. So,
Janet, Ian Ellingsworth here. You can't see me. There's my hand. I'm over here.
Hi.
As far as the programming goes, if the committee were to look over this program again, the size, and say, you know what, maybe we should cut this just to bring down some of that square footage and bring the cost down. Is that something that's even possible at this stage of the feasibility study?
Not with the time. I mean, we can make a statement about it.
Yeah.
We would not be able to redraw everything, I don't think, or render everything. That would be kind of tough with the weeks we have and trying to get ready for meeting and things like that. but we can certainly write about that. We already did some cuts early on. I think I remember. I can't
Yep.
remember. I mean, I don't have them in front of me, but they're right behind me in that pile over there. But we did make some cuts originally to the building. And the things you would look at is you would relook at all your vehicles that you're storing indoors and say, do I have this right? Did I get them all in, or do they fit, et cetera, things like that. You'd look at that. The support spaces you have for the fire department are not extraordinary. They're gear rooms, all kind of things that you want to have that you didn't have before because people weren't so concerned about cancer and cleaning, going from those hot to cold zones in a fire department. So I don't know how many years ago you looked at this before, but that wasn't the biggest thing now, but it is a very big thing. Carcinogens and how you don't take what you get out in the field and then take it into the space and into the living spaces, into the office spaces. So you don't have a lot of that either. You could argue, I think you only have 2 cells. That's not even enough for a good bar fight, I don't think, you don't have a lot of that, you don't have a lot of those spaces. You do have privacy in offices, which is really important in a public safety facility. I think that's, you have conversations internally, you have conversations with people that are in distress, you have all those kind of things, and it'll be good. And those spaces are very big. Your office space is huge. But we would definitely, we could definitely have that conversation and say, we've already done this and we're gonna, look into cutting the building by, 10% or something. I don't know what that is. I'm just saying a number.
Or it may even be certain features inside the building that we decide to cut. I'm looking at a list and I lost it right now, but there's 4 refrigerators, for example. I don't remember why we decided we needed 4 refrigerators. So, at the cost of $2,800 each, that's a chunk of change. Now it's nickel and diming, but I mean, as we look at refining things, that it may be more some of those things interior wise, rather than outer footprint, really.
Yeah, when we do the estimates, we have the contractor, the estimator carry those things just so you know. But sometimes we'll go out and say, well, we're going to go and buy our own refrigerators. But if you're going to have something that requires water or electricity, connections, you want the general contractor to do that so you don't have a mix up. But if it's literally a plug and play, that's definitely something you could do. We usually include it. Otherwise, that same refrigerator would be in the soft costs somewhere. So, and I'm trying to think of why we have 4.
I think it's probably an under counter in the training room and under counter in staff spaces and full size in the day room.
Yeah.
So
it's not hard to figure that out. So, and again, it may not be, that's like $700 refrigerator. Don't forget your refrigerators in a public space have to be accessible refrigerators. So all the equipment has to be accessible. Anything in the police department does, the fire department, they're able-bodied, but they have accessibility requirements as well. So there's a bunch of things that you might not even realize. And a lot of people also say, well, I went out and bought an X at a store and I know it's only this, but that might not be a commercial grade product. So that's another thing to worry or think about when you're cutting. But we could certainly write up a description about all of the above, and help you through that. I just don't think we could. I can't imagine. I don't even know if I have anybody. Can I even schedule to cut the building by a third or something like that? At this point in time.
Can I ask, related to that, sometimes you hear about buildings such as this that might have the outer construction completed, but certain parts are not finished.
Mm-hmm. Yep, we've done that.
We have one up the street in a very small town just up the road from us that the second floor is there, but is not, developed out. If that question came up at the forum, would you have an answer for that? Is there any spots, maybe offices or anything that could be, developed or, finalized, furnished, et cetera, in the future or not?
We have done it. We have done it in fire stations, a second floor. It wasn't completely finished. We've done that a couple times on projects. It happens on occasion. The biggest challenge with that is, when you're doing the energy code, you're looking at the whole envelope, and part of the envelope is the construction of the wall. And so I don't know, Amy, like if you don't have the drywall on the inside, how does that affect the wall construction? I have no idea.
Yeah.
And if it would be a bit piecemeal about it. And I'm trying to think of spaces that you would not have to finish out right now. And I'm having a harder time when we usually see it in fire stations when there's not a 24/7 occupancy, and so their dorms and all those spaces are just not complete, and they have to come back and do it later, or they hope to be able to come back and do it later. And all, like for a building now, like all of the mechanical systems would have to be planned to now. All the exterior walls, like we don't put insulation in a stud anymore. We put it outboard. But what Amy was explaining about these new energy code, we may have to put some insulation in that, but it's a specialized insulation, so kind of have to get it in there, and it's supported, Amy, by the wall structure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's complications to that,
I think the biggest thing, though, like Janet said, I mean, it's not uncommon to do something like that where you have a volunteer or fire department and they're planning for the future to have dorms, but you don't need them right away. But then you're talking about like a larger area that you're leaving unfinished. Here, I mean, we could go through the program, but it might be, a couple offices here and there. It might be a dorm room or two. It's not, large areas where you're really going to see a savings. It's going to be, small dollars, I think, in the end to not finish some of these spaces. I mean, unless I can't think of a large area that we would leave unfinished.
I'm just trying to think of ways to respond to questions that might come from the public.
Sure. That's a good one. It's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The fire department you're referring to, the upstairs is not meant for the public safety facility. It's meant for town office.
I can't hear.
So she's just correcting me on the one I was referring to that was an unfinished second floor, and it had to do with the fact they didn't intend to use it for public safety building, but rather for town office space. For the future. So it's a difference. Thanks, Christine.
Yeah, we did a public a police station once where we didn't finish the attic space, but we had like I think maybe one or two small rooms. I mean small rooms, 10 by 10 or something, and the rest of the space was unfinished. But we ran up plumbing for future toilet rooms, and they didn't think they were going to be using it for the police station, but actually for town hall purposes, extra space, or move like a department there that could be run independent and not be right in town hall, something like that. I forget what it was, but they weren't really sure themselves. But we had to build the architecture for the architecture reasons for how they wanted the building designed, but we did leave all the it was just plywood, flooring and walls. But again, all the insulation, everything was on the outside. The windows were complete. And we planned, I think, for the mechanical systems to be added onto or something. It's been a while, so I can't remember the details of it, but I do remember we did once in a police station, once in a fire. And I remember one other time we planned for some.
We did. Oh no, that was the fire.
Something in Holbrook.
Well, that was complicated, but
yes.
We
do it occasionally, but it's not as much of a savings. You're not going to see the total square foot savings Like you're not going to say, I'm taking 100 square feet out times $999. Okay. It doesn't work that way because structure, mechanics, installation, exterior materials, take a bite out of all of that. So.
Right. You still need lighting. You still need sprinklers. You're really just saving on finishes at that point,
Right.
carpet, paint, and the ceiling itself.
Right. Right. Because they won't let us not sprinkler that space, for instance, so.
I have just one more question. And could you please clarify for me where the site preparation costs lie? Are they in the soft or hard costs?
They're in the hard costs.
Okay.
Yep, they're toward the
what was it, Amy? What were you looking for?
The site preparation costs.
Oh, yeah.
They're in the hard costs.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think that starts on page 14.
Yes.
You'll see, site work, earthwork, paving, drainage, and site improvements and landscape are all on pages 14 and 15.
All right, I think we can move on.
Okay.
Is everyone in agreement that we can move on?
Okay. Okay. So we just want to talk a little bit about the communication tools. I know Chief Illingsworth had reached out and said you were interested in putting together some boards. We wanted to talk a little bit about that and what exactly you want to do. And I've got, after this slide, I've got some images to show you sort of the updated renderings and where we are with all of that. We can look at those. So at this point, we have a site, a floor plan, and elevation renderings. We have 3D model renderings, which I'll show you. We have graphic presentations we can show you of the site analysis that we did, the test fits, things like that, sort of throughout the study and the progress imagery from that. And then we'd need to talk a little bit more about, any written descriptions that we want to put together and exactly what message you want to convey. I don't know if you guys have started drafting any of that, or we can work with you on it, but we want to talk a little bit about what the message is going to be. And then if you want to do something on existing conditions, you guys were going to send us some imagery that you have of existing conditions of the buildings. And you were going to also put together comparison of similar projects. And so any of that information, if you get that to us, we can put it together. I think maybe what makes sense is to just go through and show you graphically what we've got right now, and then we can come back to this and talk about the community information session as well, and what we're going to show for that. So we've got this slide about what you're planning for acquisition. And I'm assuming, but maybe I'm wrong, is that this piece of land is still going to be donated and that the town would be purchasing this piece. Is that correct?
Yes.
That's correct. Okay. Okay. So this is where we stand with a rendered site plan. We had someone put some color on it to just give people an idea of what the site would look like. Obviously, there's no landscape architect working on the project at this phase, so this would be developed more in the schematic design phase. But it gives you an idea of, there would be a fence around the perimeter, and there could be some trees that would screen from the neighbors. We've got the detention swales that show up on the civil engineer's drawings. And graphically, it gives you a breakdown of where we've got pavement versus green space and all, and the reserve septic and the septic field over here. And you've seen this before. We did clean this up a little bit, add a little bit more detail in some areas, but this is the rendered floor plan that we've got for the main floor, and then the mezzanine floor over here. We added some more information on locker rooms, and there are windows shown on the plan now, and the floor plan matches the elevations that we put together for you. And then these you haven't seen. We worked a little bit more on the 3D renderings, added some more detail, and put in some plantings and some cars to give an idea of scale. And there's a flag shown out in front of the building and some skies and all, to give you an idea of what it might look like. So that's from the, that's looking northeast. So it's sort of in the corner of the parking lot where the connection would be to the new development. Whoops, sorry, wrong key. And this is looking from the northwest. The main entrance drive is over here, and you see the apparatus bays. And looking from the southeast, so this is from the police department parking area. This is the Sally Port over here. And from the southwest, sort of the private courtyard area. The apparatus bays, and this is the entrance into the fire department living quarters area, and the police department over here, the Sally Port and the impound bay over here. We're not showing the carports just for because they block the building basically, so we didn't show those rendered. And then we've also got these flat elevations, which are very similar to what you saw before, cleaned up a little bit from what you saw before, the north and east, and then the south and west elevations. And that's what we've got for graphics at this point. I think these are helpful for people, for the public, to get a sense of what the overall project would look like. So I know the message that we got from Chief Illingsworth was that you wanted to do some boards about land acquisition, engineering design costs, conditions of the police and fire department buildings, and then project costs. And we wanted to talk a little bit more about, you know, sort of the narrative you were trying to convey, and that will help us in putting these together. Because, so I don't know if you guys want to talk about the discussions that you've had and what you're thinking.
Well, I think that Ian Illingsworth, the police chief here. I was thinking that I think the committee was thinking that this would be good for our public forum to have people be able to inspect them as they come in or leave or during some downtime, just for some visual information versus just being said.
Okay. So sort of to back up what is being said. Okay.
Some of these subjects on signboards are challenging for a graphic presentation. Land acquisition, you could certainly have the land acquisition slide that we've been using all along that would describe how big it is and what is being donated and what is, you know, being purchased. The engineering and design costs, I'm not at all sure what that would mean, and along with the project costs. So those are all sort of tied together. Would you want a slide that had these summaries on it, like that we just showed you, maybe tweaked, but certainly that. So there would be a sign that had just words and charts on it. The condition of the existing fire and police departments, those are imagery, and you know, you can put labels and you can organize that. That's relatively simple, but there's not a single signboard that shows the project. So just pointing that out from my quick read of that. So I was trying to figure out how these 4 boards kind of were considered by you. What were you guys thinking? So as people are walking around and looking, what is the what do you want them to focus on?
Well, my opinion is that we should have a signboard with with some of the imagery that you've just presented, so that the residents can have some idea of what's being proposed. I know we're not. I know that's not what's going to be addressed at the forums specifically, but we're doing a video of the existing conditions, and so and people at the forum, I think, are going to see that and
to my mind, to have what you're proposing on a site for this area.
Yeah, I think we would
Yeah,
agree.
the video maybe as the first intro, right, in the meeting perhaps, so that shows the existing conditions, and then that would lead into your presentation, your PowerPoint or whatever that shows, you know, some of these images that you had there, and you know, whichever slides, you know, that seems to be the most usable, you know, for the public to understand. I don't know at this point in time. I mean, I think we need something in terms of a general cost because people are going to be asking about it, even though nothing is definitive, right? So maybe that summary slide that you had on costs would be possible.
Okay.
I don't know. Does anybody else think?
Well, I also think, and I'm reiterating what I said a few minutes ago, something that emphasizes why costs are so much higher and rising like every day, sounds like. Just to, you know, explain those in bullet points, because people are going to ask, why is this cost so darn much money? And you don't have to, you know, defend it. It's just the facts. You're telling us the facts of what's existing. I can't imagine that you can avoid that. You really have to we really have to bring that up.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah. Pulling the Band-Aid off, you know, it's not pretty, but
I think it would be good to have at minimum at least one visual of what it's going to look like from the street of what you've proposed here.
Yeah.
On the signboard?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, if you remember when you brought the conceptual designs to us, we really loved some of them, but we thought they were too ornate or whatever, too many extras, and we asked you to sort of tone it down. We loved them. We thought they were great, but we're concerned about our public, and they're saying, you know, too many bells and whistles.
I think there's a nice balance. I mean, you're building a masonry building. It's not very, Amy, could you just go to an elevation or a 3D?
It's not ornate.
It's not ornate. There's the little bits of trim that you see that distinguish the openings. It's just another kind of masonry, as opposed to, you know, you're not spending oodles of money to pop out that entry point or something like that. But yet people know definitely where to go in the front door sort of thing. But you kept it really simple going with a flat roof, and you know, the openings are really responsive to the floor plan, you know. You don't have big glass, you know, boxy corners, you know, to highlight or something. It's a pretty simple building, you know, but I think it's okay, but I don't know how people are going to react. Okay. I mean, they're used to having some masonry buildings in town. The police and fire right now are masonry buildings. So,
I would envision that, you know, part of your presentation, guys, everybody here correct me, but would be to kind of walk the public through a summary of the steps we've gone through.
Yeah.
You know, we looked at the big, nice, fancy building that we all went ooh and ah over first, and then went back to this one that we now like. We considered a 2-story building. We went to a 1-story. We considered a different kind of roof. We've gone to a flat roof. I think we have to talk, for you, I'm asking if you would talk the town through that process at a summary level. They don't need all the great, you know, the details that we've gone through, but I think that helps them understand the level of discussions and debate we've been having to try to come up with something that's reasonable and efficient and, you know, as effective as it can be for the needs and functionality of both the police and the fire department.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we haven't gone to this slide yet, but I think that's exactly what we were talking about. We envisioned for the community information session that our presentation would basically walk through the process of exactly what we've done as part of this study. And we can certainly use the graphics that we've developed throughout the study as backup for that. But
I mean, it was very logical what you did. You looked at the sites, you picked 2, you went for the 2, we did conceptual for that. You picked the one that you thought was the best. And then from there, we did more conceptual plans for that one site. And then we developed schematic. You know, it was a very logical, you took a step forward and each time you built on the information that you had asked us for, and we produced, and it was a compromise. Everything is a compromise. Certainly in a municipal project, you're not going to have everything everybody wants, certainly, but you made good decisions for good reasons. And that's what you have to get across in the end, in my opinion. That you think you did the right thing for the town, sort of thing. So I think the total project cost just knocks everybody off kilter, it just simply does. But you have to get through it, so, and I think people will argue, those aren't the right numbers. There's a lot of numbers that float around in public projects, and I think you have to be really careful of that. We see it all the time. Oh, this town built it for this, but that was like 10 years ago, and it was different energy code and different this, and different escalation factors. So, if you take that number and you put it into an escalating chart, you'd find the numbers are very close to what you're gonna see as for bidding, for the site. And you have to understand the site. You have to understand the building they did. I mean, sites are complicated. This is a pretty easy site. Relatively, it's pretty flat. Not blowing up boulders. You've got a little challenge for getting onto the site. Having that space be used primarily as a road, but once you get there, it's pretty straightforward. And you haven't had to build a 2 or 3-story building because the site is so tight. You haven't had to do anything like that. So, I think you've got to walk through the process. It's logical. It's not illogical at all. So,
yeah. Okay.
Can you give us an estimate about how much time you think it will take for you to present your PowerPoint at this one, just so that we know for other scheduling? Or maybe I'm asking that prematurely too.
Yeah. I don't know, Janet. What do you think?
I didn't hear the whole thing.
How long you think if we do this PowerPoint, how long it would take? 20...
Well, I guess the question from you guys is, for the thing, we have to go back in time, and do a little bit of, here's what we did in programming. Here's a summary page. Here's what we did during the site selection, and show them, but we can combine, slides. So we give about a minute per slide. And I think, I would take no more than 30 minutes to do this whole thing, or you'll lose people. About 30 minutes is, you've lost people. If you make it too short, then you don't get to explain that you had a process. You just skip from the beginning to the end, and that's not enough too. So, I mean, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think the question, I don't know what the video component is going to be and how long that's going to be, how that fits in with the overall. But I think that makes sense.
We can make it 20 minutes,
20 to 30 minutes,
Yeah.
But I think Janet's right. We got to get all the details in, and we got to explain it, especially when we get to the cost.
And then open it up for question and answer as well. So that's another 20 minutes probably there.
Right. How long do you have scheduled for this public meeting?
I want to say at least an hour and a half. We have.
Okay.
Pretty sure that's. I can check.
I think that's
probably enough. We're starting at what, 7, right? So
yes, I have it scheduled for 6:30, but so.
Yeah, I mean, if your introduction and your video takes 10 to 15 minutes, and then we take 30, I'm just saying that this is a long end, and then we do 20 minutes of a question and answer, whatever, I'm just guessing here, that's 2 hours.
We have until 10 o'clock.
Okay, or not.
Are you...
Video is
an hour and a half, yeah.
The video is closer to 30 minutes. It's almost finished. And based on experience from another public forum for the other big building we want to do, in which is the senior center, there were a lot of questions that came up. A lot of, public coming to the mic and asking good questions. So that could occur here too.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so that's it's closer to an hour and a half then. When I said 2 hours, I meant 1 hour before. So now we're at 80 minutes or so. Um,
Are you going to follow up the discussion on total project costs with something about what you're asking for at town meeting? Or, sometimes there's a financial discussion, about, how it impacts taxes.
my taxes, yep.
I think we're too early for that. I think we'll be talking about that a little bit tomorrow night when we meet, but I think we're not going to be going to the town asking for money right now.
Okay.
You're going to do that at a special town meeting?
Correct.
Versus the annual?
That's a current thought process anyway.
Okay.
But this is a public document, the estimate at this point. People will get it, I don't know how you do this.
So we could put this up on our website then.
Yeah. But it just came up recently with someone else, once we do the work and we hand it to you, is it now a public document?
Yes, it is.
So you have to be prepared for that, for somebody to, we were recently on a site and some concerned citizen walked up to somebody and started saying, how am I going to pay for this? How am I going, and it was like, what are we even talking about? We didn't know, but they had somehow gotten a copy of something and they were trying to figure it out. And this is a professional cost estimate. People aren't used to seeing a 17-page cost estimate and figuring it out. Sometimes I can't figure them out. There's a lot of pieces to it. And, somebody's going to say, why do we have a line item? What's a line item? Why do you have those? And things like that. So just be prepared for that. So, because there's allowances, allowance for a bolt resistant transaction window, $10,000. What does that mean? So you just be careful, or not be careful, be aware that, people could be looking for things like that. So,
Okay.
I guess I look at this more as our real first educational, part for the town. I mean, we haven't really brought them in a lot in terms of what we've been doing. So this was really a chance to just get them up to speed with what we're talking about, and what we're thinking and why. But not getting down into, well, now we need to ask you for X amount of dollars. I don't think we're ready for that yet.
Okay.
It will also help to make us aware of what challenges we're going to have through the question and answer period. And I think that's very important for us.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll get good feedback. You'll know what people are thinking after it. That will be helpful. Okay. Okay. Well, okay. So we're on for April 10th then. So we will start putting together some of those boards and a draft of the PowerPoint and send them out to you guys to take a look at. When you do get the video of the existing conditions done, if you'd send that to us, just so we have an idea, that would be helpful too. I guess the town meeting was sort of on hold right now. We're going to start also working on the draft of the final report at this point. So if you have any of those pieces to feed into it for, existing photographs and comparison to other towns, anytime you want to send those over, we can wrap those in too.
Yeah, I mean, these presentation boards should be readable from a distance. And up close, you don't want to have too many words, too dense of writing on them, because you lose people when you lose the thought. So try to keep things easy to read and easy to understand, large enough images. People may hate it. I mean, I stood next to a board many years ago now, and there was a person who had no idea of the architect, and it just hated the design, and they just could not stop themselves. And I didn't say anything. It was the people were in they can do whatever they want, and they can say they don't have to like a project, but we hope that they give us feedback. It can be bad or it can be good, but it's feedback. It's helpful for us, and it's helpful for you, certainly for the committee to understand, what people are thinking. Okay.
Did you end up doing a mailing too? You had talked about doing a mailing before.
In the works.
It's in the works?
It's design phase right now by a marketing company.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Anything you've got on that too would be helpful so we don't trip each other up with words we use. If there's specific things you fed them, so.
Been working on task 7, and I think we could send the draft, right? Where we stand with that, we can provide you with that.
We've done some comparison of other communities with certain points that we thought should be compared, and it's still not final, but we'll send you that.
Okay.
Yeah, anything is helpful. Yeah, I think the one caution, I think I've said this before tonight, but there are a lot of misconceptions when numbers fly around from other communities. Some people are talking about total project costs and some people are talking about construction costs, the hard costs that Amy was referring to versus the hard and soft costs. The year that it was bid is really important. So, and the year it was bid and because you know that the building was designed at a certain time, and then you can start your estimating escalation from that appropriate time. So that's another important one. Size of the building and the complexity of the site is important too. Was somebody building on a hill? Was somebody, you have to acquire some land to make this happen. That's in your soft costs, certainly, land acquisition. And so, those things. So, you have to know enough about the other town's project that you're making as best to apples comparison as you can. So just a cautionary tale about comparisons.
We haven't done any cost comparisons. It's just facility comparisons.
Facility. Yeah.
You may see people bring you cost comparisons though, which is one of the things that we've seen in other communities, and that it's hard because again, you don't know what they're looking at or where their numbers came from.
Or why that number was even put together. Why was that spreadsheet put together? So.
We've seen people, bring other cost comparisons from other projects brought to us, and they may have been escalated before we had all these unprecedented increases in construction costs. So the escalation that they were using was, a typical 3.5% to 4%, and that's not what happened.
And
so
a lot of
numbers
times
can be really wrong.
Yeah, and sometimes people bring unbuilt projects versus built projects. So that's another thing that's a danger, because you can always make an unbuilt project look favorable if you want, but you can't. The real numbers, the real bids are something altogether different. So that's another thing. So.
If people start throwing those things out to you, feel free to reach out to us, because we can usually look at it pretty quickly and say, well, here are the problems with what, you're looking at, or there's not enough data here to really even speak to this, or, we can help you with some of that.
Yeah.
If that happens. So.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
I think that's all we had. I don't know.
What else? What else? Yeah.
Is there anything else you guys want to talk about?
Yes, I was wondering on a poster board for like the project costs. I was wondering if you could do what this building costs, and then an estimate of what it would cost in 2018 and what it would cost 10 years from now. An estimate. Is that something that you could do, so people would know same building at a different time and how much it's going to escalate?
Sort of escalate it out and then reverse escalate it back to see what it would have cost pre-pandemic.
Yeah. That way the total project cost, they can see what it costs, but then they can compare it. They have something to compare it to, the same building, you know. It's not like you have to do but I would imagine there's a percentage you could probably figure in 2018, you know, it would cost this, and maybe
Yeah.
10 years from now, you know, if you add like 7% or whatever it is for Massachusetts, 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have some escalation numbers from our cost estimator obviously tracks this stuff from a couple years back. Whether it was this year was 5%, this year was 10% or whatever. We have some of that stuff. We can certainly ask him for clarification. And then the problem going forward, we used to do I've done many master plans where, we project 10 years out, 20 years out, and, we do this. And I think towns make the mistakes when they do it's lovely to do a master plan for a town because you can think ahead. But the challenge of it is figuring out when you're going to build the building. So I did a master plan for a town who had done a master plan for a town before that. And the number that stuck in everyone's head was the number that was done at the year that estimate was done. Now, we did one 10 years later, and we had projects, but instead of showing the number of the date, we had that available to them, but we had the town commit to a schedule of some sort and said, well, this project costs, $10 million now, but we're not going to build it for 7 years. What might it cost 7 years from now? I think that's what you're asking for, and the problem with that is we had a pretty steady escalation number then. So this would be guessing, a bit more guesswork than normal.
Yeah, we'd have to talk to the estimator and say, how long do you think we should figure this 7 to 10%? It's a big look into a crystal ball to what might happen. But
he has told me his crystal ball is quite cloudy lately. So, the numbers have been not what they, he's honest about it. This is the numbers we're seeing, but it's not been a happy, number. But the interesting other thing that he's finding out is he's been doing on build projects. Projects are going into construction. We do reconciliation conferences, like in your next phase when there's an OPM involved. They would probably bring in their own cost estimator, and so that their estimates are done and our estimates are done, and then they're reconciled to see if whatever carrying. He's coming in, almost within 1 to 2% of each other. Everybody's seeing the same number. So, I mean, the good and the bad of that is the numbers are all high. The good news is that they're similar. The estimators are not wildly all over the place with their numbers. So everybody's seeing the same escalation, so.
But I mean, I think your point is good. It's not getting any cheaper. It's not getting any cheaper, and there's a cost to not doing anything. We've talked about that before too. If you don't do anything, then you're going to have to maintain your existing buildings, and you're going to have to deal with issues that come up in those buildings. And is that the best use of the town's money? So I think it's a good talking point for sure.
Mm-hmm.
A couple things. We've also worked on a document of frequently asked questions. It's still in draft form. Maybe we should share that with them. They may have some input on that. And the other thing is our planning board assigned a street number to this lot. So it's no longer 0 College Highway. It's now 125 College Highway, just in case you've got that in any of your presentations.
Oh, we do. We have it all over.
Yeah.
Well, that's good to know. Okay.
Yeah, 125. Okay.
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 Yeah, we're meeting again ourselves on the 1st, right? Yes. But would we want anything we need it before the 10th, that's all. A draft or whatever.
Of HKG's presentation. Well, we are having a planning meeting for the forum on April 1st. If you have something to send us before then, that would be terrific. Otherwise, as long as it's ready for the forum. But
okay,
we'll see what we can do. At least a framework, an outline. Maybe Amy and I can come up with an outline.
Yep. Okay.
All right.
I guess I have one other thought, and that is, if you have concise examples of any communities, plural, not just one, who decided to go the cheapest possible route and perhaps made big mistakes by doing that and ended up spending more money in the long run. I don't know if that's anything that, you could speak to. I mean, it does look like we're doing a beautiful state-of-the-art project here, even though we're trying hard to keep it as simple as possible. It's a combination of regulatory requirements and just playing what's necessary to meet code and all of the other ways. But, did somebody get cited for failing to do certain things, OSHA sightings or ADA non-compliance or something like that cost them more money in the long run? Or didn't do the site preparation or we heard about one public safety building when we went to visit locally here that they bought, help me with this, they bought computer stuff that actually was about to lose its license. Remember when we went, it was to Hadley, and then they were stuck with stuff that didn't have licensing anymore. Remember that? Was it Hadley we went to?
I didn't go to Hadley, so it might have been.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, by just trying to nickel and dime things too much, they made mistakes. They didn't have enough storage area. They wished they thought by duplicating certain rooms, for use, that would be a cost savings, but then they ran into problems. I know some of the committee members here have changed since we did that tour. Were you there, John? Do you remember that?
For Hadley, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
Yeah, they have issues with storage.
Yeah.
I don't remember the computers.
Oh, I think John Worthman said that. Anyway, those are the kinds of examples I'm just coming up off the top of my head with, that you kind of have to do it right the first time, at least meet the basic requirements the first time.
Yeah.
Or you might get into problems.
Yeah. We can think about it a little bit. Nothing's coming to mind.
Nothing. I just, we have a building inspector in another town who told a story about his public safety fields in his town where they tried to save money by, I don't know, I don't even know the story because he was just rambling about it, but they set it at the wrong elevation. And so they had to redo the road coming up to it. And it happened to be a state road or something like that. And it opened a can of worms, that cost them well over $100,000 to fix. So I have heard that one recently, but I no details. Like he didn't name his town. He didn't. I don't think he wants anybody to know. But he was pointing at somebody was trying to look at having us do something different that we didn't agree with or we didn't think was good engineering. And he was like, "Whoa, stop! Here's what we did. Boy, did we blow it!" Sort of thing. So I don't know. There's not a whole lot of those out there, but we'll put our head. We'll talk to some OPMs that we know that we have from other projects and ask them if they have some lessons learned ones. If ones we frequently hear of is we built this big grand entry but we didn't have enough office space, and now we can't convert that grand entry into usable space. We've heard that a few times. We don't have that in this case, things like that. But we'll ask if there's anything
or storage. I mean, I think a lot of times people will say, "Gee, I wish I had put more storage in." Or
we hear storage a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the big things that you've emphasized all along is the big changes over the last 5 to 10 years on building codes and energy codes that now we've got to meet, that we're not even
right.
They're more now than they ever were. So I think the explanation would be a good couple of minutes spent to help people understand exactly what that means,
Right.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and those are non-negotiable. We have no choice. We have to do them. And they do add cost for sure. So,
Yep. Okay.
We can talk about that.
We can do that. All right.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay. All right. Well, I'll send you, Christina and Chief Billingsworth, I'll send you the PowerPoint that we showed you today, because that's a little bit different from what I sent you last week. And
little updates.
And then we will shoot for getting you the draft.
And we will send you some materials as well, maybe not.
Great. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Great.
All right. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. Any comments on that before we go to other business that can't wait? Anybody have anything to say about the meeting?
I think, if they can incorporate some of those basic things and do that kind of overview of what we've been going through, I think that will really be helpful. I think that should at least inform the public about all the challenges we're facing doing this. We're not, we're taking it very seriously, and I think we ought to be able to convince people of that.
And I think they're doing good job being articulate in that way too. I feel confident that their presentation is going to make our case for us.
I think so too, yeah. I don't know where we're getting it. I wasn't quite sure we're ready on this task 7 one, and I just had a couple questions on it myself, but on the future Southampton one, where that still seems to have some things we need to fill in better, I think, maybe.
You mean even before we send it to them? Maybe they can fill some of the things.
Well, I mean, maybe. I mean, I just looking at like partway down where it's the FD EMS double and drive-through bays. We've got one double and 0 right now, but we want to go to 4, okay? And then PD cells and Sally ports. We've got 2 holding cells and 0 Sally now, but then all we've got in that last column is 1, and I don't know what that means.
There should be 1 Sally, 1 Sally port. According to their schematic, it should be a storage bay as well.
Wait. Yeah, so there's a couple things like that that I think are just not totally clear in that final column maybe. But I was wondering whether, as she brought that out about what people might ask us, should we do anything in terms of, I don't know if we can get any costs in terms of Granby or Hapley. I mean, is that something we should have here for what it costs them? But again, she's saying that because it could be apples and oranges about what people tell us, right? So I don't think we want to do that, right? Okay, I just wanted to check that.
Because even comparing what the estimate was for our last attempt, it doesn't mean anything anymore.
I mean, all we can do is say a square foot cost, that's about it, right? I mean, way back when, it was what, maybe 300?
It was, under 400.
Yeah, something like 300 per square foot, and now we're talking 900, right? So it's 3 times as much.
The town of Lee just had one approved. The warrant was approved for, and it was for the building and design and construction, and the town approved it. In 2020 census shows that their population was 5,577, I think. And it was for just about 37 million.
Okay. So that's comparative. So that would be another piece of information that we can bring forward at the public forum, that we're not, that's very comparable to what we're moving forward with.
Right.
Yeah.
It almost is worthwhile reaching out to them and just seeing what they have for a programming schematic to see what they're asking for compared to what we're asking for.
Wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, that sounds like, that seems so comparable now price-wise, and the size of their town isn't that, and it's even smaller than we are.
Right. And on the heels of that, when we get to the next agenda of anything that can't wait, it's just something I want to bring up to the committee and get a feel or temperature of the committee on this piece. It could have impacts with our meeting tomorrow, and I think it's important. I just want to express it.
And I think we should move on unless anybody has anything else. Mark, that was a great request. I thought that was really terrific. Thanks. All right, so Chief, I do know you want to address the situation.
Well, a couple things is, as I was looking up language for the town warrant, even though it's nothing that I would do, I just look up the warrant. I did some research, and I noticed that, for instance, Williamsburg, as well as Lee, they put design and engineering costs. They put all the costs together, as well as building costs, and they just had it on one article. They didn't ask for this for the design and engineering and then ask for this, or land this, because my thought is this. I'm concerned about, number one, I'm concerned about time. I don't want to rush. Personally, I don't want to rush things. I don't want to make a mistake by rushing. And I just think that if we had more time, we could have a better, maybe even a number. And I'll give you an example. So at the Capital Improvement Committee meeting the other day, a member of that committee said something that was very resonating. And she related how, as a taxpayer, she used herself as this for this example. She wasn't representing the committee, but more so herself. That by putting down, asking for 3 million, and not and realizing that 3 million, if it passes, doesn't necessarily mean that if we then ask for construction costs, that's going to pass. And her concern was, we're now going to lose 3 million. And it resonated with me. That made sense to me. Because they might look back at our past history and make comparisons with that. And I feel that personally, for time, this is just my own opinion, that we try to hold off and ask for a special town meeting and find out what the select board wants to do with that land first. And if the select board decides that they want to go for the entire 54 acres at the annual town meeting, and then that gets approved, we now have our land, and then we can put money. Personally, I believe that it should be everything. I don't think we should it's almost like asking for the cart before the horse. You want to just get the cart and the horse at the same time, because the town, for me as a taxpayer perhaps, we might lose 3 million if we don't get awarded or approved for the entire construction costs. That's a lot of money. And if it's all in one price, for instance, Williamsburg as well as Lee had that. I researched their town warrants and their articles, and they had it all together. And they both were approved. My concern is also if we'll have a chance, if the town says no to the 54 acres, we'll still have a chance for the donated, or 125 College Highway, if you will. We'll still have a second chance for that. But if we put them together, it may split town vote, maybe. And if the town vote splits and they say, no, we want the entire parcel, and then someone says, well, we don't need all that, let's just go for this. And then we don't get the amount of, I think it's 2/3, we don't get that, we're now, it's done, it's a dead deal, possibly. And I just, it's something that I think maybe we should think about as a committee. I just brought it up because I don't like the fact, I feel very rushed right now. I feel like we're going into something that we're asking a lot of the town. I want to be prepared. And personally, I don't feel prepared right now for this. And I would rather have just a little bit more time. I know we can make we'll make the public forum, and perhaps we can have another one prior to the special town meeting, or do some more public outreach. But I am concerned about asking for 3 million, not even realizing, and we ask for 3 million and it gets approved, and then we ask for another 37 million or so, and that doesn't get approved, that 3 million. And if this is being brought up in a simple committee meeting, this will probably be a topic of discussion at the annual town meeting. So I think just bringing that out there. I think maybe if the committee just wants to think about that, and I don't know if discussion can be had tomorrow where it's more relevant. I don't know. It's been on my mind. I've been thinking about it.
So you're saying that you should put it all in one, but not right away.
So
But when you do go to ask, it's going to be for the whole.
It's going to be for the building and design, and as well as the construction, everything.
Everything, yeah.
Everything.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Does that include the land or not? That would.
Well, it all depends on how things work with town meeting, depending on if the select board. If the select board decides to go with the entire parcel, do we say, what, if they're going for the entire parcel, let's hold off. And if the parcel, if that gets approved, then we can move forward with the project based on the acquisition of the land already.
But suppose that doesn't get approved?
Then in the annual town meeting, All right, the special town meeting, we ask for the,
You go back to the carve out.
go back to the carved out part.
So that means that the sellers are gonna have to be agreeable to wait for a special town meeting.
I remember in a past committee meeting, they said as long as we had progress,
As long as we're moving
as
forward.
long as we were moving forward, they would be okay with I mean, it wasn't in writing, but they did say that in the meeting. They seemed to be amenable to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's been a challenge, because I mean, that's been one of my concerns, is if we put both of them, both parcels, if you will, on the warrant right now, and you know, we don't get anywhere, we risk really, you know, losing anything that we have, and this is our only chance to get this right and do it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not gonna come back and have this committee 5 years from now. I mean, this is it, guys, so we gotta do it right, and I think that's been the challenge, is do we just take one of them, and then which one do we take? Do we put them both on? And I'm hearing more what you're saying, which makes a lot more sense in my head.
And just to give you an idea, what they have for available capital funds is about $140,000
Yeah, right.
for the entire town.
That's
And
me.
Their
That's me.
request, well, no, that's for the town of Southampton.
Oh,
What they have available for that. Everything else would have to be debt.
Yeah.
And that's about over, I think the entire request is maybe 4.5 million for the whole town. So,
So this all focuses back to the select board meeting if they decide if they want to pursue the entire lot. And that'll trigger us to have to take a vote to withdraw the articles.
well, we haven't put any articles in necessarily. We have a placeholder.
Well, we've
Yes.
submitted them to the capital committee.
Yes, that would have to
So
withdraw.
that triggers,
We won't have to withdraw it, there's no money to fund it now anyway. That's what he is saying,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Right.
it's in line with many other capital requests.
So,
There's
you
no
know,
3 million to fund this.
Scott has us as placeholders for the town
Yeah,
meeting,
yeah.
but it doesn't necessarily have to go that way if we choose otherwise.
Yeah, yeah.
so we're waiting for a select board.
Well, we're gonna have our joint meeting tomorrow night, and I think there's gonna be a piece of the discussion.
so here's a question. If we need to borrow 37 million, that has to go to a ballot anyway. That isn't a town meeting vote. So if it goes to a special town meeting, let's say September, will we have to wait till a May ballot vote? Or do we hold a special November? Well, there will be a November election, won't there?
Right.
Big year for elections.
It'd be about 35 days after.
So we just want to plan it.
Or the select board calls for the vote.
Okay.
For the override.
We could call a special town meeting.
A special town meeting, but a ballot. That would be
An election.
35 days later?
Yeah, after the select board calls the ballot. It has to be a minimum of 35 days.
And there's going to be an election in November.
Okay, so it'd probably be on the election.
So we'd want to plan it so we have that 35 days.
Oh, okay,
Right,
great.
we'd want to plan the special town meeting so we have
One
the
thing for
35
sure,
days.
that election's going to get a lot of voters.
Right.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Anyway.
And maybe this question can't be answered till tomorrow night, but is there a thought that the entire parcel would go on to the annual town meeting? We don't have the appraisal for that yet, and you're not expecting that. Are you going to try to squeeze that into annual?
I would like to. I mean, I think we're gonna, you know, we can put out the warrant as late as we can possibly do it until the very last minute, but I mean, we're hoping to get this appraisal in by, what, another 10 days? And then depending on that, then we've got to enter into negotiations, you know,
Right.
with deliveries. But
And build community support and awareness of why we need that land too. You think there's sufficient time for that?
Well, I mean, I think having the public meeting here in April is going to be a piece of that. I mean, I'm not sure by the 10th whether we'll have the actual, we should know what we're looking for in terms of the parcel, I think, between the two. Whether by the 10th we have an actual price, I'm not sure by then, but we might. Yeah, I mean, we got to think it through a little bit more, but I think that's, the idea would be to put something on the town meeting, yes, in May for whichever piece of land. But right now, personally, I'm leaning toward the bigger parcel myself, and not the carve-out one.
No, I know, but I just wondered if the entire parcel should wait for a special town meeting as well. And only to build public support, because again, it's a major purchase, and we know that people are asked, we have to justify why the
Well, that's why
town
we,
needs 54 acres.
I think we'll have to see when we get the appraisal in, see what, what the difference is gonna be, and, as we've said, depending on whatever that is, if we actually were to own the entire amount, then part of that frontage is commercial property, which the town could then sell. And I mean, we would recoup a share of that purchase price, if you will, right? And so therefore, the long-term debt would be less on the land part, and that would be a debt exclusion most likely, which would be a short-term amount that would go off the rolls as soon as it was paid off, which would be different than the longer-term borrowing for the construction.
Right. And we as a committee understand all of that. The residents in general have to be made aware of that. And I just am wondering, and maybe there is enough time, it's a question. All right, so anything more on that? We will discuss it again based on the results of our joint meeting. I think we will meet afterwards. I don't know whether you've seen the agenda that I posted, but we will go into executive session downstairs with the select board, and then we will come up here for further discussion, and it will be an open meeting at that time.
And what time is the executive meeting?
7.
7, okay.
Yes, that's at 7.
So just food for thought, maybe let it marinate and think about it. So maybe we can have a little bit more discussion on it tomorrow.
Yes, we will, and hopefully there will be clarity that arises from the executive session so that we can come to a final decision about that.
Yeah. It's a strategic decision that we have to make. It's how do we get everything that we want, and how do we make it happen without getting stopped in our tracks and not being able to continue with public safety complex.
Right, and this could also allow us just to have a little bit more public outreach too if we do go towards the later date.
Yeah, when we've gotten everything together, we'll have a stronger package, and then we will have time to present it to the public. And I would think too that very much that the April 10th is the first of more than one forum. This is going to be very educational for us. We're going to learn our challenges, and then we'll have some additional time to work on answering questions and maybe modifying our thinking a little bit.
Yeah. No, and I think whatever comes out of the April meeting, I think we just got to keep information flowing in front of the public continuously. We can't have long periods and long weeks with nothing out there. Scott found, and maybe you can send him around, I forget the 2 towns, but he found a couple websites of towns that have done a public safety complex, and just even their website, the kind of stuff that they have on their website is just like, that's the kind of stuff we need to be thinking about and doing actively, and getting people to follow us a bit. And I know we've gotten, various email lists about people that wanted to be informed about our progress and so forth. And, we may need to, certainly before the public meeting in April, we need to get some emails out to those people too and let them know that it's happening.
And way back, I remember bringing up the question of whether there's like a group that could be like Friends of the Public Safety Building, lack of a better word, because we can't do coercive kinds of things. We can't purchase lawn signs or anything like that, but that say vote yes. But others in the public could do that. And I have never heard of anybody who doesn't think we need one. It's just a case of getting people out, being informed. Everybody believes we need a new public safety building. Some people may think we need a simpler one, but we need to answer those questions. I just don't know if we can, if anybody knows if anybody could, none of us can do that. We can't, we're on the committee. If somebody knows somebody that's got the wherewithal to sort of develop a kind of a Friends of the Public Safety Building.
Denise Riggs.
Well, that's cool. And then, and I did mention 2 other individuals. One of them sends out all these emails about the Greenway, and that's, and I can't remember her name, what's her name? Jennifer Roberge,
yeah.
and she's very capable of just using her email list. She might do that. And the other one is the people that supported the Magic for Maddie thing, and those are all school-aged children's parents. And that's Julianne Locke, thanks.
You get
So
the
they're
first name, I
younger
gotta
people.
laugh.
Thank you.
We compliment you.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, good. Speaking of complimenting each other, I need to get more information on what to put on this for me too. It doesn't have to be in the meeting. There's just a couple more things that have holes in it. And then we can go back to that. And you said something about more costs on tax 7?
No, I'm reiterating that I think per what Amy and Janet said, we probably don't want to have too much in there. There's nothing on there now. I was just
Okay.
double checking that we agreed that we didn't want to put any of your costs on there unless it was, the only thing it would be maybe a cost per square foot. That might be the only thing from 2024 to current, just for Southampton, not for Granby and Hadley. I mean, that would be the only thing to think about, but even 24 is...
Right.
That's not,
Okay.
That's not even relevant, probably.
Well, if they're going to give us the answer to what Mark asked about.
It was,
Yeah.
for 2014, it
2018.
was about $500 a square foot.
Was it?
Now it's about 1,000. So
Yeah.
you figure another 10 years, it
Yeah.
will be 1,500.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Anyway, but, no, I think that the thing is just to be, totally clear on task 7 of that whatever we're putting in the future column, that it's just clear what we're talking about.
Okay. Good.
Any other business until tomorrow night?
I move to adjourn?
Yes, I just want to confirm, tomorrow night's meeting and then April 1st. And then, so now may I have a motion? Oh, you just made second, please.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Aye.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. See you tomorrow.
This government meeting is brought to you by Eastworks and our local cable subscribers.